So I've been playing Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Ever just, feel like life isn't really worth it? Like, everything you do is but a fleeting moment left forever to be forgotten. Kinda just like
Mirror's Edge Catalyst,
a focus-grouped product developed by DICE and published by EA. The long-awaited sequel to the first-person parkour platformer Mirror's Edge that everyone wanted but no one remembered. Even I didn't up until a week ago. I remember looking forward to it, checked out some videos on it by people whom I knew felt the same about the original as I did, and then I don't remember. Weird how that happens, isn't it? It's almost like EA willed it like this, with its very unique marketing strategies and also fuck. I think I just got a nosebleed. But yeah, just like everything else that is ever else, they went and turned Mirror's Edge into an open-world game where you collect the things, do the objectives, and unlock parts of the map gradually. Though they still kept around the first-person parkour, only then without all of that pesky level design stuff that requires a lot of thought, time, and dedication both on the players and the developers' part. We don't want that. And what we do want is marketable imagery. Insert Faith, a cool badass Asian lady with tattoos and now for some reason one of those ghastly can I see the manager haircuts. And boy oh boy does she ever want to see the fucking manager. So much so in fact that she climbs all the way to the corporate top and accidentally ends up saving the world from a corrupt oligarchical government. And here to help her do that is you, the player, pushing buttons on your controller and making Faith do that whole parkour thing what I mentioned earlier. This time around, they went for a much more realistic art style, with plenty of water and lighting effects, cracks in the walls, dirt trash, and other artifacts. It looks cool when you just kind of, look at it, which I will totes get into more later. But right off the bat, I noticed how it disrupts the flow of play. For the most part, I won't be comparing Catalyst to the original too much, or at least I'll try not to. But the reason that everything looked so impossibly clean, flat, clear, and uniform in the first game is that it made it so that you could quickly make sense of your environment and react accordingly at high speeds. And here you can't really do that, so along with this being a helpful tool for an open world game all around, they turned the iconic runner vision into this constant breadcrumbs handholdy waypoint system rather than it just highlighting climbable objects. Both of these additions might sound like they're nothing more than cosmetic alterations, but they actually quite drastically change how the game expects you to play. And sure, you can turn the runner mode off or even set it to classic, making it more of a highlighter than a guide, but I could never really play the game like this because of the busier imagery and the much larger open world. I mean, here's a good example. This runnable wall isn't really highlighted that well on its own. It is only because of the wee red ghost jumping against it that I knew what to do at breakneck speed. Which I guess is kind of the same thing as just making it a bright red color, but I can't help but shake the feeling that this mechanic is less of an elegant solution than it being hyper stylized and properly integrated into the world's overall design. And even then, with the runner vision, there is still way too much shit going on. At one point, for instance, I was pimp-ass sliding down a rope when a random helicopter flew by, grabbing my attention, thus causing me to flunk my landing. It might be minor and no deaths were had here, but it's small things like this that add up over the course of the entire game, getting just a tad more annoying every time. I will say though that most of the open world itself is designed well enough. Its size remains rather tiny, and rather than being truly free roam, there's only a set few tracks with multiple layers. It's almost like a 2D Sonic level, only then with a handful of them set down on top of a hexagonal axis, branching out from your base with a few strands in between to connect shit up. Which means that it can keep the sequence-based design of the first game intact, at least to some degree. The route from your base that goes through this undergroundy area shows this off pretty well, as it has some really satisfying jump dash, hookshot, slidey combo moments that feel pretty good to nail down, and some of the more sectioned off parts that almost resemble proper levels have some really swanky design too, allowing for a good fast-paced flow, cheeky shortcuts, as well as a tiny bit of puzzly platformery sorted out yourself gameplay. And the controls are also tight, despite them taking a fair bit of getting used to. What I mean with that is that shit's sort of automated in a way. L1 is not the jump button, and L2 is not the slide and crouch button. As you can see, they are clearly labeled as the up action button and the down action button, implying that anything related to you doing either requires you to hold shit down. So if you see a big gap with two pipes on opposite sides and a wall runny bit in the middle, you don't actually have to time your jumps in between those like an MLG badass cunt crusher, as one simply has to run in roughly the right direction whilst remaining eye contact and holding down the
up action button.
And the same goes for nailing landings or sliding underneath vents.
It works!
A bit awkward at first perhaps, and also not quite as satisfying as doing it manually, but it works. Well, except when it doesn't. So, while I wouldn't say that it's at all badly designed, nor that it's without its merits entirely, I still don't think that a sandbox was a very good fit, as it still looks, feels, and handles like a proper speedrunning game. That's because the City of Glass is very sadly fractured. As I said before, Sonic levels. Sonic levels that you traverse through time and time again, going back and forth between waypoints and mission objectives, all the while blindly following the red trail, because fuck if I knew where the hell I was going. Effectively turning these fun, well-crafted tracks into just another mundanity. And that's also the thing. Every new mechanic, from the obligatory upgrade system to the mission-based structure, seems to go against what the original stood for. Which shouldn't have to be a bad thing in theory, considering that this is its own game, but it's just that what it introduces doesn't work all that well because it kept the original's gameplay ethos. The upgrade systems specifically were a giant fork up my ass.
She lifted up her skirt, only to reveal a fork sticking out of her anus.
To make the game play well, you need to Ubisoft your way through an upgrade screen where you spend the points that you get from doing missions and finding collectibles. The upgrades including shit like a proper roll upon landing to break down fall, the fucking quick turn, which seems like a pretty bloody important thing if you ask me, and also some combat combos, but more on those later. In any case, the way that this gimps the actual platforming is bad. Besides it giving off a shitty first impression, it makes the game less about actual skill and more about simply getting from point A to point B. Not to mention how it took me nearly 3 hours just to get the same basic bitch moveset that you fucking start with in the original. You know, the things that help you keep up your speed and momentum. The fucking bread and butter of the entire goddamn game. The only good thing about the upgrade system is when it starts getting new mechanics altogether. Like a fucking grappling hook allowing you to swing around or break blockades to open up new areas and find secrets. That shit's neat because it expands upon the formula proper and makes the backtracking and retreading less annoying due to there being some new shit to find. And because of the more automated button-holdy platforming, once your moveset finally does fill out, stringing together rooftop cop genocides and epic jumps does become a lot easier and genuinely quite fun. Especially with the combat actually being presentable now, involving dodges, parries, and swift takedowns that use the momentum correctly, and there's also no more botched as fuck gunplay. It's still hella awkward, don't you worry about that. Mostly because of the poor spatial awareness, dysfunctional lock-on, and the questionable hit detection, but it's okay nonetheless. In general, I'd say that Catalyst is a lot more accessible, which was likely the point because big budget, CA, blah blah blah, like, I get why the game is the way it is, but for what it is, they didn't do too bad of a job. Though that's also kinda like saying, good work cleaning up the shit from our walls. Though maybe next time, actually aim for the fucking bowl. Looking at it less cynically though, I can also see them not wanting to do the exact same thing twice. So all they could really do was add, tweak, and change the style very slightly to make it seem like less of a map pack for the first game. Which is fair, but Mirror's Edge did one thing, and while it didn't do that thing incredibly well, it was, and most likely still is, the only game that did it. Which is why many people, including myself, love and or like that game. Catalyst, however, does not do that thing, simply by virtue of them turning it into a Ubisoft game, ending up with what is essentially just a less entertaining version of Dying Light. Not a terrible game either, it still has its moments, but certainly far from great. Outside of the visuals, I don't think that this game will really stick with me. But dude, what fucking visuals though. The City of Glass looks and sounds fucking incredible. The fashion, while massively fuckboyish and very H&M 2015 tier health goth, fits the world and seems believable enough in a
Yeah, I can see future assholes looking like this for a couple of awkward years.
kind of way. At this angular ass city, man, it has the typical Blade Runner-esque flying cars with the big shield billboards and the random Asian influences, but the spiky, almost kind of low poly flair of the architecture makes it look like someone took the haircut from Virtua Fighter 1's Jackie Bryant, slathered it in fountains, advertisements, and white glossy car paint and turned it into a fucking city. And the soundtrack fits really well as it's rather ethereal but cock-pumping whenever it needs to be, seamlessly transitioning between the two, successfully amping up the marginally flaccid gameplay. What's really impressive as well is how the City of Glass changes based on the time of day. And I don't mean like weather and lighting effects and shit, it's almost as if the entire color palette seems to change throughout the game depending on the district. It's really cool, and at least it always gave me something gorgeous to look at. And yeah, while I do prefer the absurdly bright, clean interiors of the original, the dilapidated college dorm asshole aesthetic kinda works too. It looks more lived in, I guess, and seems to imply world building to some extent. You can actually see people walking around and cars driving by, for instance. It hampers the gameplay as stated before, but it does feel like more of an actual place than the original's world ever did. And it's not like that very pure visual style is entirely lost either. Anyway, for what it's worth, I did enjoy it. It's just one of those times where, when you look at it critically, it just doesn't hold up due to all of the design flaws and missteps. But it was still entertaining to me regardless.
Also, the story fucking sucked and was hella predictable. Like, holy shit, mate, Jesus Christ, it's been a while since I've seen something this rudimentary. Didn't even give a single fucking shit.